Hello everyone, greetings and salutations. I am the Amazing Atheist, and I usually do these Q&A videos over on my TJ Does Life channel, so if you like this kind of video, check that out. For those of you who don't know, this video is a little bit more long and boring and less kind of animated and entertaining than your typical Amazing Atheist video. It's more of just me droning on, answering fucking people's questions, and, so let's just fucking get to that, alright? Fuck you. Should there be a movie about an evil wild ape who spreads Ebola by plane? At this point, why not? And I think Nicolas Cage should play the ape, because he'll do anything. And it shouldn't even be a good ape costume. Like, it should be subpar even compared to, like, old special effects, like even the fucking classic Planet of the Apes movies. It should be worse than that. It should be far worse. It should be like in Team America World Police, where they take the main character, I forget his fucking name, but they valmorphize him into looking like a Arab, and they just smeared some brown shit on his face and a few little wads of hair here and there. It's like, wow, it's amazing. That should be Nicolas Cage's costume in this movie. And yeah, Samuel L. Jackson should also be in that, because it could kind of be a sequel to Snakes on a Plane. This is my final effort after asking 4 times previously, which radical feminist would you fuck if you had to choose one and why? I love how this guy is like, this is my final effort after trying so many times previously, like it's some tremendous effort of will to type out a fucking one-sentence question. Oh my god, you poor burdened fucking soul. You know who I'd fuck? Femitheist. Because she's the craziest one I've seen or heard of. And she used to have this thing called Castrate All Men Day, but now she doesn't want to do that anymore. Now she just wants to phase men to like 1% of the population. And she's like, well, men will be happier that way. So whatever, I'd fuck her. And she's kind of cute in her, crazy way. Totally fucking loopy, but kind of cute. Could you draw what you think is the perfect butt? Also, do you drive automatic or manual? I can't drive manual. Don't know how to handle the stick. Don't know how to handle the fucking stick. Could I draw the perfect butt? I couldn't personally draw the perfect butt. I have an ideal of what the perfect butt is, and, Actually, there's several. There's different perfect butts, because, it's not like... It's like people are like, oh, we're gonna get the ultimate pizza, but there's so many good types of pizza. There's the Chicago deep dish, and then there's the pan pizzas, and then there's like the New York style, and then there's like the little thin crust pizzas, and then there's like fire roasted whatever bullshit. They got all kinds of fucking pizzas out there, just like they have all kinds of asses. So there's not like there's just one perfect kind of ass. There's many different subsets and categories of asses, and then there's perfect examples of each. But there's an artist, actually, porn artist, so NSFW, not safe for work, but I don't work, so I don't care. This is the closest I get to working, so fuck you. And his name is Shin, Shin. There's 2 I's. And he draws pretty nice butts, I think. He's not the greatest artist in the world in a technical sense, but I really like the way he draws gigantic fucking asses. That's pretty cool. What are your thoughts on social democracy, democratic socialism, also death to TJ Drinks Soda? And this is TJ Fucks Things saying that. If you are familiar with the Drunken Peasants podcast, you know that TJ Fucks Things is kind of a recurring character. Democratic socialism. I think that works better for my, money than this kind of democracy-republic hybrid that we've got going on here in America. But it's kind of a difficult question, because there's always going to be the gradients and the balance. Like, I believe in capitalism too. I think that you need a little bit of socialism and a little bit of capitalism. I don't think that these things are necessarily the polar opposites they're presented to be. I mean, a lot of times, that's kind of goes for a lot of things that people think of as opposites. They're actually reliant on each other, and I think socialism and capitalism are that way. I think capitalism promotes tremendous innovation. I think that when you have that motive of wealth attached to achievement, that definitely gets people off their asses. It gets them motivated to create new goods and services and so on and so forth because they want to attain that American dream of wealth. But not everyone is an entrepreneur, and we need to recognize that as well, and we need to be sure that we take care of everyone in our society. Not just the people who are going to be, great entrepreneurs. And I think that we also have to have certain protections. When the vast majority of people are going to be workers and not bosses, then I think it makes sense to have institutions that protect workers and not just labor unions. I think we need better labor laws in the United States. And I think that people are entitled to a living wage, and I think people are entitled to a home, and I think people are entitled to health care, and I think people are entitled to a great many things. And, the word entitlement is thrown around now as though it's a dirty word. But we live in a society of plenty, and yet some people still have next to nothing. And that doesn't strike me as fair. Especially when I don't buy into the conservative narrative that those people who just lack things, lack material possessions, lack wealth, lack capital, those people are just lazy, and that's why. If I believed that line of rhetoric, then I think I would probably still be a libertarian, but I don't buy it. It's just not what I've seen, and it's not what I think statistics bear out. Do you think lizards are a reincarnation of Buddha? And Mars, happy birthday, by the way. Well, that question is utter fucking gibberish. Might be a little too personal. How is your homosexual relationship with Kyle different from the one you had with Holly? And how the fuck do I approach that smoking hot Iranian girl, not a Muslim, by the way, but an atheist, at school? She has a boyfriend that's kind of a pseudo-liberal bigot. Well, I've already gone into the nature of my relationship on my Tumblr to an extent, and I would perhaps entertain follow-up questions there at some point. But as for approaching the Iranian girl at your school, I'm assuming you're saying that she's not a Muslim but an atheist. And I know a lot of Iranians actually are atheists, especially, ones that live in the U.S. I'm sure there's also some in Iran. But I'd imagine they're a little more hesitant to speak up about it. Well, if she has a boyfriend, then maybe you should just respect that and, pursue someone else. Or I guess you could just go strike up a conversation with her and see how it goes. Why are some of your fingernails black? I have an alternating pattern here, but if you actually... Well, you can't really see it on the camera here, but they're actually green with... It's a dark green, but they are green. Why are they green? Because I chose to do so, and I've kind of always wanted to do more stuff like this, but my social anxieties prevented me from doing it. But I've made a lot of strides recently towards conquering my social anxiety, so this is no longer the big deal to me that it once was. I no longer dread people looking at it. Now, there are, of course, some days where my social anxiety flares up and I'm hiding my nails, ha, don't look at me. But for the most part, I can fucking walk around and be like, hey, fuck you, painted nails, what you gonna do, society? Can't keep me down, motherfuckers. I figure if my friend Ben can walk around with giant fucking holes in his ears, then I can fucking paint a couple nails. Fuck. Favorite pre-1960s actors and actresses and why? Akira Kurosawa. introduced the world to Toshiro Mifune, a Japanese actor who was a total badass, and I believe that his acting career started prior to the 1960s. And that's probably my favorite actor from that time period. My favorite actress, probably Marlene Dietrich, and I've never actually even, I don't think, seen her in a role. I just like her attitude, and she has some great quotations. So I guess I like her more as a person than as an actress. I haven't really seen her. So, but I haven't watched a ton of pre-1960s movies. I do watch old movies, but typically they're from at least the 70s and 80s. I mean, that's not to say I've never watched any fucking movies from the 50s or previous. Jimmy Stewart, John Wayne, those guys are pretty cool. Should probably put them in there as well. Do you watch any streams on Twitch? If so, who are your favorite streamers? No, I do not. I'm sure I would probably enjoy some of the content they have up there, but I just don't have the time. I mean, well, that's kind of a lie. I do have the time, but I have other things I like to do with my time, such as sit in my garage smoking cigarettes and answering questions on Tumblr and just generally fucking about, which I guess watching people on streams could be part of that, but it's not. So, yeah. Hey TJ, do you feel there is a need for a new Star Trek series due to recent prequels by J.J. Well, those are not really prequels. They're retelling of the original series in an alternate dimension. So, not really prequels per se. J.J. Abrams' Star Trek almost became cool and opened its universe to a broader audience. I think there is still so much left in the universe to explore, but if there's a next time, please, a little less action and more back-to-the-roots style with ethical questions like Star Trek used to be. I do think that there should be a new Star Trek series, and actually, Michael Dorn, the actor, I hope that's his name, the actor who portrays Worf, has apparently long been pushing for a Star Trek series wherein Worf is the captain of a starship, and that would be amazing. Have you considered using a vaporizer? It doesn't cause throat irritation or coughing. That is a lie. I cough more on a vape than I do on a pipe. And I do own a vaporizer, but I don't use it because it burns through the weed a lot faster. I mean, the perfectly legal tobacco that I smoke. Hi, TJ. Have you heard of Wolfpack, the movement to get money out of politics, and do you support it? If no, please elaborate why. Thank you. I actually do support getting money out of politics, but I must confess that I'm woefully unprepared to answer a question about Wolfpack specifically. If it is, in fact... I mean, I'd have to study it more, but I mean, if that's the general principle, getting money out of politics, or at least, well, obviously you're never going to get all the money out of politics, but if you're going to get corporate money out of politics, if you're going to get lobbyist money out of politics, then I would obviously be in support of that, and anyone who isn't is a fucking moron. Favorite movie? My favorite movie is Seven Samurai by Akira Kurosawa, probably tied with Unforgiven, and probably also tied with The Big Lebowski by the Coen brothers. And Unforgiven was, of course, starring and directed by Clint Eastwood. Ever been in a fight? Yes, I've been in several fights, and I've always been the victor, probably due to my immense stature. And, I know I'm a big fat dude, but still, all I have to do is fall on people. So, like a tree. Timber! You're squished like a fucking insect. Are these the butts we are looking for? Any butt will do in a storm. Teach me how to not give a shit about everything, Master TJ. Well, if I knew the secret to not giving a shit, then I would surely share it with you. But I give a shit about certain things. I don't give a shit about everything. And I find a lot of the things that other people care about to be completely stupid, just as I'm sure there are people who think the things that I care about are completely stupid. But that's just the nature of fucking life and reality and subjectivity, and then we've all got to deal with that in our own fucking way, and there's no possible way that I can, impose my method of dealing with it on you. And really, is it a good thing to not give a shit about anything? I mean, if you have no passions, then you have no convictions, you have no real motive to even be alive in this world. I mean, you have to give a shit to some extent, even though it can be painful to give a shit. So what? Pain's part of life. Suck it up, pussy. Fuck you. How do you sincerely feel about the Ebola outbreak? Do you believe that it really isn't much of a problem like the government says, or do you believe that it's a much more severe problem than we're being told? Are you afraid that perhaps even you could end up catching the virus? I ask because I personally am pretty much terrified of the possibility of becoming a global pandemic, and I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about the matter. I do not give a fuck about Ebola. I cannot believe that it continues to be headline news day after day after day after day after day. I think it's trumped up bullshit. I think Americans are a bunch of fucking scared little pussies who are falling for a lot of media fear-mongering. Do you like Yowie? Yowie? I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's, the Japanese gay porn comics. I like some of it, but a lot of it I don't like the way the art style is. I don't really have a problem with the material, obviously, but some of the like super, I don't know what the style would even be called, but some of it just off-putting. Are there any situations you find yourself in that you feel you are afraid to show the fact that you're attracted to other men? If not, has there ever been times in the past you felt this way? What are/were your feelings about that? I'm scared of people. I have social anxiety, and I'm really scared of other people's judgment. So being with another man is kind of difficult from that perspective, where you know there's a stigma attached to that in a lot of people's minds, even to this day. And so there's always going to be that sort of nervousness and apprehension. But I've made a lot of strides towards dealing with that. And probably that's why I've been able to do stuff like this, is because I've been dealing with that. I am an atheist, and my sister is a Christian who hold the stance I don't see how I can say all other religions are wrong, but can still believe that mine is correct. I can't read this shit. There's no fucking punctuation. Learn to punctuate, kid. Are there any anal toys you'd recommend? Personally, I'm interested in trying anal beads. Anal beads, depending on the size, obviously, are a good beginner toy. I have a pair of beads where the largest bead is maybe like this big. And it's extremely comfortable, because it's actually like, the one I have is like a progressive, the beads get progressively larger as it goes. So you never feel like, it never really feels like one bead is tremendously larger than the other, because you just took one that's roughly comparable to that size. So that's kind of cool about it. And yeah, I would recommend that. If you're going to use anal toys, I would recommend trying to find something that's soft, because, that hard stuff, if you stick something really rigid in your ass, you can, give yourself like fissures and all kinds of other stuff like that. And I've had to deal with that. So I know that that's problematic. So I would stick to softer toys. Make sure if you use a dildo, make sure it's like a fleshy one rather than a really stiff one. Stuff like that is always good. At this point of your life, which gender you like more sexually, male or female? The gender thing is really kind of, I don't care, some bisexual people, they kind of have like a certain preference one way or the other, and then other people it kind of seesaws. And I've kind of just realized that for me, it's not even important. Like, I just have a voracious sexual appetite, and it's almost completely indiscriminate. Who is Kyle, and could you go into details about his butt? Kyle is my boyfriend, and I'm not going to go into details about his butt, but it is nice. What do you think about Christian atheists? I don't know. That's all I got for now. That's an oxymoron. Christian atheists can't possibly exist. You can't be a Christian and an atheist. I guess the only way you could do that is if you believed in the philosophy of Christ, but not in the divinity of Christ. But I don't think that makes you a Christian. I think that word is reserved strictly for people who accept the divinity of Christ, which, of course, if you're an atheist, you cannot possibly do because you don't believe in the concept of divinity. When you think of a really juicy ass, do you ever feel like you want to scar that ass with a knife just a little bit? Not usually a knife, but I do find myself wanting to just bite the fuck out of it. To a ridiculous extent where, like, blood is drawn and marks are left. Just, I just have that ravenous, like, I have sharp teeth, too. I just want to fucking chomp on an ass. Just bite the fucking shit out of it. Well, you shouldn't say bite the shit out of it when you're talking about an ass, because asses can produce literal shit. But you know what I'm saying. I'm not talking about scat there. I'm talking about the figurative shit. Or am I? Yes, I am. I've asked at least 6 times now. Oh, you poor fucking soul. Please respond. Would you support something like the 25-cent suicide booths in Futurama being implemented in the real world? If not something so easy to access, how about clinics where after waiting period and a certain age restrictions, you're able to kill yourself using a gas or some other painless method for a small fee or even for free? I don't see that as being a particularly good idea. But, you know, what do I know? People are going to kill themselves. People have always killed themselves. Maybe making it easier to do, or, you know, creating a process where people have to go through counseling and, you know, other stuff, you know. But I mean, I don't really think, you know, the problem with suicide is I really don't think that anyone's life is so bad that there's no chance for improvement. The only time I really see suicide as valid is if you're going to die anyway and you just want to choose your own terms. So basically, you know, if you're sick. That being said, I think people should have the right to commit suicide if they really want to. But I don't think it should be codified in our society to that extent. You know, I don't personally agree with it as a choice. I remember you saying that you think that capitalism is better than socialism, but you never explained why. Could you expand on that view a little bit? Also, butts. Well, I kind of already addressed that in a previous question. I don't necessarily. I guess I would no longer say that capitalism is better than socialism, because, like I said before, I view both of those things as a necessity. I view the motivation and innovation of capitalism as a good thing, and I view the social safety nets of socialism as a good thing. So I think that both of those should be implemented, and I don't think that there's any reason why they can't coexist peacefully. Obviously, my version of capitalism is a more well-regulated capitalism, and I think that we've seen in other countries that works. Do you think sports are an outdated form of entertainment? I understand you may find this question pretty stupid. Personally, I believe sports are way too primal to still exist in the modern age. I don't believe that there's anything wrong with something being primal. I think there's a reason why the top-selling video games are men going around shooting each other with guns. And I think there's a reason that the biggest sports are, you know, big teams of men competing against each other. In fact, I mean, why should we discard that primal side of ourselves? I mean, what compelling reason is there for us to pretend like that doesn't exist and just tuck it away in a little box, as if it weren't part of the human experience, as if that's not part of who we are? It is part of who we are, and we need to stop running from it. In fact, it's my belief that we should embrace our primal selves, you know, to some extent. That's not to say that we should, you know, cast civilization aside, or say that there's no place for civility and rationality and, you know, all that stuff. Obviously, I'm an advocate of that. But I'm also an advocate of just, like, cutting loose and fucking having a good time and being your fucking true primal fucking self and beating your chest and punching things. And, you know, that's fun. Why should we act as though that's not part of our nature? Why do we have to supposedly rise above it as though it's this lowly thing that we should be ashamed of? It's not. It's part of the human experience. Would you enter a simulation where your life would be far better and feel real, and where you have no memory of entering it? It's a very difficult question. I don't think I can make that choice, but I guess that if I were to make it, my life would improve drastically. So it's kind of a thing where, I guess that for me as an atheist, I've kind of already made that choice to an extent, because of course you can be a lot happier if you think that God is out there and he cares about you, and when you die you're going to an immortal paradise. But I don't believe those things. I could if I really tried, I'm sure. But what I believe is that the universe is strictly material, and that when you die you're fucking dead. And so I've chosen an uncomfortable truth over a comforting lie. And I think that I would always make that choice because I value truth. Where were you on the night of June 6th, 1989? Well, I was having sex with all these girls with gigantic asses and all these dudes with gigantic cocks. And yes, I was only 4 at the time, so I was a very precocious child in that respect. What do you usually do for fun while smoking cannabis? It's kind of a thing unto itself for me. Like, if I'm smoking, I can just sit in a garage or on my couch in my living room or downstairs on my bed. I can just sit there and stare at nothingness and just be high and just entertain myself with my own high thoughts. Do you read/watch a lot of hentai? I don't really read a lot of hentai, but I don't really watch a lot either, but I look at hentai pictures online. Hey TJ, why do I poop green? I don't know. You should probably consult WebMD rather than me. As a liberal, do you see multiculturalism as a bad thing? And what are your thoughts on Islam in the UK? I'm British, and we have been for quite some time at the forefront of multiculturalism, and as a whole, it has ruined our nation. Indeed, Islamist extremism is on the rise. In the past 20 years, we've gone from teaching Latin and Greek in junior schools to remedial English in university. The mass inflow of immigrants and the vast cultural differences divide communities, and now we are even seeing small cultural wars where Romanians and Islamists will face off in the streets with machetes, attacking both each other and the British population. And it's getting to the point now where the extremely leftist government has even tried to cover up the suspected 14,000 small children raped by Muslim grooming gangs. I guess that for me, I'm more in tune with the idea of the melting pot, which is sort of every culture reaching sort of a homogenized state. And really what I'm in favor of is not even that, but it's a little closer. What I'm really in favor of is the discarding of cultural traditions entirely. And, obviously this is a point of view that a lot of people find very objectionable to, because people cling to their culture just like they cling to their religion or they cling to their political views or whatever. People have these props of identity because they don't want to just stand on their own merit. And I think that cultures... cultural traditions is really an excuse not to think. A lot of these things that people cling to is an excuse not to think. Well, I believe this because I'm a liberal, or I believe this because I am an Islamist, I'm Muslim, I'm Romanian, I'm Sikh, whatever. People have all these different traditions and ideas, and instead of thinking for themselves, they just install the operating system in their brain and they just go on that. And that, to me, is problematic. because I think people need to think for themselves, and I think that we need to embrace secularism in all things, and that means not just the rejection of religion from the public sphere. It means, I think, the rejection of all cultural traditions from the public sphere, and instead creating our own ways of doing things and living in the present, and learning from the past, of course, but not being beholden to it. Do niqabs and or burqas turn you on? No. Hey, TJ, what does it mean to play us out? I don't know, but fuck it. We'll do it live. What's your opinion on the agnostics? I don't understand. I mean, a lot of people use the word agnostic wrong. They make it sound like, well, we're agnostics because we're uncertain. Maybe there's a God, maybe there's not. But that's not really what agnostic is supposed to mean. It's supposed to be an epistemological statement about whether or not God can be proven, or whether or not we can know whether God exists or not. And I think that if there is a God, we should be able to prove there's a God. We should be able to find evidence that there's a God. We should be able to present good argumentation that there's a God. And as you can see, such as if you watch my Drunken Peasants debate with Venom Fang X, there is no compelling reason to believe in God. There's a lot of great mythology. There's a lot of interesting stories in the Bible, and but there's no evidence. There's no compelling reason to actually believe any of it's true. And even if there was a God, I don't think that he or she or it or they or whatever would represent any of the concepts of God that human beings have come up with. It would be something far grander than anything we've conceived of with our little, wads of gray matter jiggling about in our fucking skulls. Which do you think is the best source for unbiased news? I don't believe that you can get unbiased news. I think that everything is always going to have a slant. I think that and it should. Opinion is always going to be part of news, and trying to separate the two things is really a futile endeavor. I think that the best thing you can do is read as many different perspectives on a story that interests you as possible, so that you can get a full picture and see how different people think about it, and then decide how you think about it. Would you have sex with a hermaphrodite? If so, how would it play out? I don't know how it would play out, but I'm not going to reject sex with anybody offhand. I'd like to get to know them first as a person. The fact that they're a hermaphrodite doesn't really have any bearing on the fucking situation. What do you think about fan fiction, specifically Marilyn Manson fan fiction? I've never read any fan fiction. Maybe I've glanced at some here and there, but for the most part, I don't know. I'm sure there's probably some good fan fiction out there, but from what I've seen, a lot of it, an overwhelming majority of it, is absolute crap. So I don't see any tremendous reason to check it out. You know what I'm saying? Hey, TJ, could you please explain how corporations actually control the government, the media, and pretty much everything else? I've heard it a lot and want to understand how it works, but can't find an adequate explanation that makes sense to me. Cheers. Well, the media is obviously controlled by corporations. If you can't figure that out, seriously, put on the fucking dunce cap, because the media is entirely owned by corporations in this country. There is an independent media, but the mainstream media, that's all owned by giant corporations, and it's owned by surprisingly few giant corporations. As for how they control the government, that's a little more complicated, but not really. It's just a matter of the fact that, let's say you're an oil company, and the Senate is on the cusp of passing some new anti-pollution laws that would be a detriment to your company. So you go to Senator McDouchebag and you give him $40,000 for his reelection fund, and of course, in return, he votes the way you want him to. He doesn't vote for the sake of the people that he's supposed to be protecting and representing. He votes for the sake of the oil company that gave him $40,000 fucking dollars. And that's one of the many ways, but probably the most obvious way that corporations control the political process here in America, with money. It's quite simple. They give candidates money, and then the candidates do what they say. And yeah, I mean, it's really not a very difficult explanation. What's your favorite Pink Floyd album? I'm gonna go with Dark Side of the Moon. I also like Animals. I also like The Wall. I also like The Division Bell. And then I haven't listened to a lot of the other ones fully yet, but I'm sure I plan on, listening to more as I go along, but I'm still trying to even fully digest what I've heard so far, so delving into new stuff would just totally overwhelm me. Politics is very slowly getting more liberal. How do you think we are living? How long do you think until we are living in a sane world, i.e. drugs are decriminalized, corporations can't get away with hiding millions from the tax man, religion is pretty much non-existent, and whatever else you would like to add? We should never assume that a trend will continue infinitely. We shouldn't assume that just because politics in America have been getting more liberal over time, that is just an everlasting trend that we can count on like clockwork. It's still something we have to work at. And as for this utopian state of perfection that you speak of, when will we get there? Probably never. Will you have a drunken peasant's Halloween extravaganza? That is a possibility. How do you think Anita Sarkeesian would react to certain animes? Also, ban G-Man. I don't know how Anita Sarkeesian would react to animes. Probably she would just say they're sexist, because that's what she does with everything else that she watches. Because, of course, she looks for sexism everywhere, and she finds sexism everywhere. This is probably the 1,000th time this has been asked, but is it true you divorced your wife and now having a relationship with a bloke named Kyle? Yes, that is true, although me and my wife are not officially divorced as of yet. But that is true that we have gone our separate ways, and I am now seeing Kyle, my boyfriend. TJ, do you think that one day technology will be so advanced that it will know how to create ultimate technology that cannot be surpassed? You're speaking of the technological singularity, and that seems like a pretty sound idea to me. The idea that eventually we'll create machines that can create better machines, and then those machines will be able to create better machines, and so on and so forth, until eventually we have technology that's so ridiculously advanced that it's probably even irresponsible that a species as stupid as us possesses it. Out of all the guests you've had on the Drunken Peasants, which one did you want to A, kill, and B, have sex with? Probably. I mean, I don't want to kill G-Man, but I've definitely had moments when he's been on where I wanted to strangle the fuck out of him. And as for having sex with a guest, I don't know. I've not really thought about any of our guests sexually, honestly. But maybe I'd have a fucking threesome with the fucking two guys from the Bible Reloaded, Hugo and Jake. I could be in the middle, kind of a sandwich situation. 3 big fat dudes rutting on a fucking beach somewhere like elephant seals. That sounds like it could be fun. TJ, one of my close friends' father had his dentist license revoked for doing things like recycling his patients' teeth and cementing them into other patients who needed teeth implants. As bad as I feel for my friend, I feel like this would be great background to a Batman villain. Should I send this story to the producers of Gotham? Don't waste it on that show, because that shit looks horrible. Batman minus Batman? Hell no. But also that would be a lame villain backstory anyway, so go ahead and send it in. Probably right up their alley. Will you smoke crack? I'll smoke your mom's crack. There is a massive butt plug monument in Paris. Do you think you could fit that up your ass? Well, I could damn sure try, but unfortunately some conservatives vandalized it and it got deflated. So that's awful sad. When are you going to get a haircut, you fucking hippie? I don't know. Probably never. Never again. I'm gonna just maybe when I start tripping on it. TJ, what European country do you like the most, and which one do you hate the most? I mean, I've never been to these countries. I would just be speaking purely out of fucking ignorance if I answered that question. But I mean, I'll do that, I guess. My favorite European country is Scotland, even though it failed to become a country when they put it up to a vote, which is a big mistake in my opinion. Scotland should be independent. Fuck you, England. And my least favorite country in Europe, probably Romania. Do you ever worry about having a massive heart attack like your father? No, I never worry about having a massive heart attack like my father. Yes, I worry about having a massive heart attack like my father, you fucking idiot, especially because I smoke and eat like shit. And have a history of heart disease on my entire dad's side of the family. In fact, that's probably how I will die. When, if ever, will you get a haircut? I just answered this. Fuck you. Hey TJ, my brother got into an accident and had most of his fingers on his right hand removed. He's only 20 and I'm very worried for him. It hardly resembles a hand anymore. I am grateful to say it could have been worse, but this will change his life. I don't know if you have an opinion on this, but can you give me any advice on helping him cope with this? Thank you. It's everything in life, like every time something bad happens to us, it's a challenge. And trying to make things instantly better is always going to result in disappointment. You have to realize that everything like this is a long process of recovery. And you have to be willing to put in consistent daily effort. And if you can't do that, then you're never going to fucking succeed. But you have to be able to content yourself with slow progress. And look, it's different for some people. Some people, they chop off all their fingers on Monday, and by Friday, they're fucking cool with it. It's like, whatever, I ain't got no fingers on this hand, I can deal. Some people, it could be years. Some people, it'll always be an issue, and it's just something they're going to have to deal with on some level. The most important thing you can do for your brother is just be there for him and make sure that he knows that he can talk to you. Make sure he knows that you understand. And just do what you can to help him out and take his mind off it whenever he needs it, or talk to him about it when he needs that, or whatever. There's no one approach that's just the ultimate way to do things or something. Reading the news makes it seem like your government is completely corrupt and run by multinational corporations in Wall Street. Your education system sucks. Your healthcare sucks. You're being spied on 24/7, and everything is pretty much awful. Obviously, the media always focuses on the negatives. So what's it really like to live in America? How much does it really affect your day-to-day life? Would you prefer to live in some liberal European country? All that stuff, of course it affects our lives, but it's very difficult to see how it affects our lives because, in one sense, the life of the average citizen seems very detached from all the stuff that's going on. But it's just because it's very difficult to always see the connections. But, I think ultimately, America is a worse country for having all those problems. And, it does affect the life of the ordinary citizen. And also the weird citizens like me. But, it's not like America's total shit. We have a lot more freedom to say and do things than we would if we lived in some other countries. I definitely prefer living in America to living in Iran. Hell, I'd even prefer living in America to living in a country like England. But ultimately, I don't know if I'd want to move to another country now because of culture shock and because I feel that I'm so American that I couldn't possibly exist in any other environment. But maybe if I could have chosen to be born in a different country, I would have. How big is Internet Aristocrat's dick? I don't even know who Internet Aristocrat is, so I'll stop you right there. Probably really small. Do you think your female self in another dimension is fat too? I hope so, and I hope I have a really big, like, huge butt, and I hope I smother people to death with it, and that's my serial killer power. If you had to get caught having sex in public, what time period would you like it to be in? Personally, I'd like to do this in medieval times so I can be well and truly tortured. If I had to be caught having sex any time, I would say in the future, because then after you have sex, you can go and like buy a laser gun and shoot people. Or some other thing that would be in the future. Or you could have sex in the back of a flying car. That'd be pretty sweet. Or maybe even in space. If you had to be an activist for a specific cause, like out on the streets protesting, talking at booths, trying to get people to sign petitions, etc., what cause would you choose? I don't know. Probably legalize cannibalism. Do you ever carry pocket knives when you're out on the town? No. How did big butts evolve to be so beautiful? Why is the thigh gap so appealing? And the least interesting question, why has not one single extremely rich person given or all of their wealth back into society? And do you think it'll ever happen? Well, a lot of rich people actually, when they die, will donate all their money to charity, or at least a lot of it. And, of course, like Bill Gates has given away billions of dollars. Obviously, he keeps billions of dollars as well. I don't know why big butts are so beautiful. I especially don't know why it's appealing to white guys like me when white girls tend to have smaller asses. Why is the thigh gap so appealing? I don't know. I've never really cared about the thigh gap thing. So you'd have to ask someone else about that. What's your opinion on the Rastafari movement? They have a fascinating worldview to me. I don't care. Which is worse, communism or fascism? Well, most forms of communism are ultimately fascistic in the sense that they have this totalitarianism aspect to them. But, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like a difficult question to answer because there's no one communism and there's no one fascism. There's a huge like gradient in between the two things. There's always different levels of this, and there's no real way to measure and say, oh well, this is communism, because even when you have a communist country like the Soviet Union, people who are communists will say, well, that's not true communism because of this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And there's probably fascists out there who, when you point out the flaws of fascist countries like Mussolini's Italy, they'll say, oh, well, no, that's not true fascism because of this, and this. There's always going to be different ideas about what those terms mean. So it kind of depends. There's some versions of communism that are worse than fascism, and some versions of fascism that are worse than communism. But ultimately, can we just agree they're both shitty systems and they don't really work, and that it's horrible to live under communism or fascism, because under communism, there's not that wealth incentive that we talked about with capitalism. There's no real reason to be an entrepreneur. The only thing you would only do it like, I'm going to do this for the benefit of my fellow man, and we're not that altruistic a fucking species yet. And under fascism, it's like, oh, who wants to? We have to obey every edict, and the government controls every aspect of our lives. Like, who the fuck does that sound fun to? People who want to be in the government, maybe. What is your opinion on video games and their effect on culture today? On another note, are you going to dress up like your pug this Halloween? If you are, what's he going to be? My opinion on video games and their effect on culture, I think that, they have the same effect on culture now that movies had in the decades leading up to now. Which is to say that I think that they do a bit to form how people think, how people see the world around them. That's what art always does, is it gives us a basis to to look at the world, to look at the broader world. I mean, that's why if you and it's the same thing that books do. It's the same thing that paintings do. It's the same thing that any form of art does. It gives you a new lens with which to see reality. And some of it is really vapid and stupid. Like music now. A lot of music has just become, look at my butt, watch it jiggle. And I have nothing against jiggling butts, but when that's everything out there is jiggling butts and we're going to go dancing and we're just having a good time and that's all there is to life, then, that kind of skews someone's perspective. I think, when you have these movies that present this very simplistic black and white, good and evil sort of narrative, that kind of gives people a very superficial view of reality. And that's why people don't like the art fag movies. They don't like the independent features and shit because, like, oh, here's this nuance and here's this moral ambiguity. And people are like, oh, I don't like that. I want the black and white, clean and simple shit. Because that's how people want to view the world, in a very simplistic way. And a lot of video games are very guilty of that. We're the good guys, this is the bad guys, we're going to get them. But then there's other games like the BioShock games where there's a lot more ambiguity and you can choose to be good or evil and it's a gradient and you never know where exactly you're going to fall on things. Or Fallout, that's another one where your moral decisions have a tremendous impact on your reputation in the world you live in and what kind of ending your story has and all this other stuff. And I think that's important. What do you think about Game of Thrones? Have you read the books? If not, or if you're ever planning to do so. I don't have any current plans to read the books. I've watched the series. I've not watched all of it, but I've watched most of it, and I think it's pretty good. And I have no real. I think it's a good show, and I probably will watch it all once it's all out there. Is it possible to be bisexual but still prefer one gender over the other? Of course it is. Also, is it possible to prefer certain features of one gender while preferring different features of the other? Yes. Example, liking dick but not liking the male physique and liking the female physique but not liking pussy. What category of sexual preference should these preferences fall under, if any? I think bisexual is fine. Have you ever listened to Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell? If so, what are your thoughts on it? I know it's kind of a crazy, like, conspiracy type show, and my friend Howard Bloom has been on it quite a few times. He's like a regular guest on there. And I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on it. I've never actually heard the show. What are your thoughts on the actions we're taking to counter ISIS? I think that this is kind of a tricky issue because on one hand, I know that our continuous interference in the Middle East is probably exacerbating the problem. I think that's conventional wisdom at this point. I don't even think that's controversial to say, but on the other hand, ISIS is so extremist, and I see the way that they repress people under their control, and my sense of justice just cries out for them to be toppled. So, yeah, I think that maybe the bombing campaigns are a good step at this point. Although bombing is a kind of a clumsy thing, but I guess it's good to keep boots off the ground while still doing something to counter these fuckers. What do you think of aliens in the emissary? What do you think of the aliens in the emissary episode of Deep Space Nine? Are you talking about the wormhole aliens that have no concept of chronological time? Because those are pretty awesome. If you're talking about something else, I don't know. TJ, will you think that once we master virtual reality, people will choose a virtual life instead of real life? And if so, do you think that would be a bad thing? I don't know what people will do. I imagine that people will probably spend time in both realities. What soda is your favorite? We call it pop here in Ohio, boy. Just like Coke. Pretty boring. I'm currently watching the 5th season of Dexter on Netflix, so I was wondering what your favorite season of Dexter was/is. I think that the best season of Dexter is season 4. I think that I was actually talking about it earlier. not in this video, but earlier today with Kyle, I was talking about how Season 4 is my favorite season because the Trinity Killer, portrayed brilliantly by John Lithgow, and the interesting cycle of his killings. He's actually mislabeled as the Trinity Killer because his cycle includes 4 victims. And I find it fascinating that each of the victims he kills represents a different member of his family. And that's kind of fascinating stuff. And John Lithgow gave a terrific performance. And the themes of the particular season of Dexter trying to figure out if he can be a family man and a serial killer at the same time, only to get that emphatic no at the end of the season when certain events transpire that you probably already know about, but for the sake of not spoiling it for people, we won't get into. Torture you, best deal in town. Hell yeah. Put some fucking clamps on my nipples, some fucking jumper cables. Shit like that. That's always fun. Train an elephant to rape me, whatever. Do you think cisphobia is real? Also Cox, as in fear of cisgendered people as opposed to transgendered people? Sure, I mean, that exists. And in many cases, it's justified because there is violence towards transgender people. But I don't think that means you should fear everyone who belongs to a certain group just because some are a bad example of it. Just like, we don't all say racism is correct because look at the crime statistics. We know there's other factors going on there, and we know that even if the crime statistics are one way, that doesn't mean that every person who belongs to a certain group is that way. It's bad. It's a bad thing to stereotype in general, because anybody's. We're pretty much all part of a group that could be stereotyped. Like, as a man, you could say, oh, well, men are responsible for far more violence than women are. Therefore, you're a bad person. And you hear that shit from feminism all the time. And it's just like, hey, I don't represent all men. I only fucking represent myself. So don't stereotype in general, regardless of who you are or what you believe. TJ on the DP, that stands for double penetration. Yeah. No, actually stands for drunken peasants. It also does stand for double penetration, though, which is a happy coincidence. TJ, on the DP, do you ever get tired of having G-Man on the show? And is there anyone that you want to come on DP, but no, never would? Thank you for answering my question. My dream guest on the Drunken Peasants would probably be Marilyn Manson, just because I feel like that would be fascinating. He's always been my kind of hero and icon and shit. Although he'd probably just be drunk and fucking make no sense, because that's 90% of his interviews. Although he's still fascinating to listen to talk, because, he's so tangential and obviously very intelligent, but he's also very out there. What is your opinion of how the world works? Are you friends or do you hate each other? It's hard to tell. Maybe a little bit of both, but we haven't really interacted much in the last, year or two, so I don't know. Do you feel bad for Ben after the world saw his face? Also, delicious butts of all colors and sizes covered in cheese and sour cream. I don't feel bad for Ben that his face got shown. I don't think Ben even feels bad about his face getting shown. I mean, you didn't really see the whole thing anyway. You saw basically from here. But, Ben's a cool motherfucker, and he's fine. What music other than Marilyn Manson do you listen to? Well, I listen to Pink Floyd. I listen to Rammstein. I listen to David Bowie. I listen to a lot of classic rock shit, CCR and Skinner and shit. And I listen to Eminem, older Eminem. Listen to Nine Inch Nails, older Nine Inch Nails. Listen to Smashing Pumpkins. Listen to a lot of 90s rock like Nirvana. Listen to, I listen to a lot of stuff, honestly. But Manson's the best, so fuck all that other shit. What is your favorite Martin Scorsese film, and what X-Men mutant power would you like to have? My favorite Scorsese film probably is The Departed. My favorite X-Men power, if I could choose one, I don't know. Probably just, I don't know if I only choose this because Wolverine is such a cool character, but I would go with that, but the adamantium version, but not with like the painful shit where it gets grafted on horribly. No, just there, and adamantium, and I could fucking be invincible. And that seems pretty cool. I have claws. People fuck with me. Give them a claw, fucking right in the face. Claw face, you're dead. Fuck you. That's always fun. Could you please tell us about your boyfriend Kyle, you little bitch? But in all seriousness, how did you meet? Well, we met online, actually, through Tumblr, and we started talking, and, eventually we just realized that it made sense for us to be together. I don't really want to get into extreme details about him because I don't really know yet that it's my place to do that or discuss that, but I would say that he's very similar to me in his attitudes and ways of looking at the world, probably more so than anyone else I've ever encountered. Can you share some of the most memorable threats you've received? Probably the most memorable threats I received were from the Buddhists, just because it seemed like such an unlikely source. In the early days of YouTube, I made a few anti-Buddhist videos, and I pretty much said all I had to say about the subject, just because, there's not a lot of Buddhists anyway. But, there are, of course, but they're all, Asian. They're not watching my fucking videos. And, of course, there's some American Buddhists. And I don't know, I kind of object to this idea of anti-materialism, because I am a capitalist scumbag, and I like money, and I like possessions, and I do find happiness in those things. And I think that the idea that you should remove all earthly attachments, especially to people, is very disgusting to me. And I believe that attachment is a good thing, even though it does bring pain and suffering, because I think pain and suffering is part of the human condition and should be. But I said that essentially in some videos, and a lot of Buddhists wrote me and basically said that I'm a piece of shit and they'd like to run me down with their car, or they'd like to chop my head off, and so on and so forth. And it's kind of strange because you think of Buddhists as being very peaceful, but I guess that's an undeserved reputation, because I encountered some extreme hostility when I criticized their ideas. What is your experience with drugs in the past, and what is your opinion on drug use? I think drug use is acceptable as long as it's done responsibly, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with doing drugs. I think there's some drugs that obviously are more problematic than others. I don't think anyone can easily just be a casual meth or heroin user. But there's a lot of drugs that have interesting effects that can teach you things about how you perceive reality, how you actually look at the world around you. And you can use them to have some fun, to kind of see the world from a different perspective than you would have ever been able to do so if you hadn't taken those drugs. And it's fun and it's magical, and it should be encouraged whenever possible, as long as it's done with some modicum of responsibility. What is the most severe injury you've ever had? I've never had a really severe injury. Probably this collarbone being broken or dislocated. I never did quite figure out which, but it bothers me even to this day. And that was when I was a kid. It was on a trampoline. I just landed wrong on it, and it got fucked. Didn't even fall on the ground. Just landed weird on the trampoline itself. And injury. But I've never had a tremendously severe injury. What would you like on your sandwich? I will take meatballs, tomatoes, black olives, Parmesan cheese, and maybe some salt and pepper. What is the emotion or feeling you hate the most having? Probably just boredom, ennui, just when I feel a lack of motivation to do anything in particular. That's always a discouraging feeling. I'd rather be miserable than be bored. Dear TJ, do you love motorcycles? Nope. Have you read Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason? If so, what do you think of it? I haven't read it, but I think I read the Nietzschean rebuttal to it, unless I'm mistaken there. It's been a while since I've read Nietzsche. But I agreed with the rebuttal, so I would imagine I don't agree with Kant's original whatever. How does it feel to now be part of an oppressed minority? What are you talking about? I've always been part of oppressed minorities. I've been an atheist for years. I've been bisexual for years. I've been intelligent for years. And that's the oppressed minority no one really talks about, is people who actually have a fucking brain in their heads. I have a free house for 5 days. What should I do? Sex and drugs. That's the way to go. TJ, in your next Q&A answer session, can you please address your divorce? No, it's my personal business. What are your views on Eastern religion, namely Buddhism? I already answered that. Can I jerk you off and swallow your cum while you're asleep? Well, if I'm asleep, then obviously I have no say. Just do what the fuck you want. And I think that at an hour and 5 minutes, we've done enough of this Q&A for me to wrap things up. I'm the Amazing Atheist. Peace the fuck out. Please buy my t-shirts down below. Thank you for watching this entire video. Now, because I'd really appreciate it if you guys would give this video a thumbs up or even a thumbs down if you thought it fucking sucked. I really want to hear your comments down below on any of the stuff that I talked about. I'll try to be interactive in the comments section. And once again, thank you very much for watching. Amazing Atheist, double peace, double fuck, double out. Oh yeah. Feel that shit.